How do you even begin to review Super Metroid, or Ocarina of Time, or Super Mario 64, or even the original Super Smash Bros.? These are games that created genres in the video game industry, setting the basis of storytelling, defining their gameplay, and that would later inspire other games that would carry the torch once lit by them. But I am a journalist, and there's stuff that haven't aged that well. And even though the legacy of Super Metroid is one of the biggest in the gaming industry, I will review this game accordingly. In this video, we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to start with the gameplay, and then we're going to the story. So, let's get started. This being the third video done in this marathon, the gameplay of Samus is already more than explained. Somersaulting, shooting in 8 directions, being locked out of progression until you get a certain power-up, you know the drill. But this is where it all started. Every Metroid game and subsequent Metroidvania game has big stuff from here. This is the inception of a genre so beloved by players and developers alike that it still outgrows the 3D platformer spectrum. First, I'm going to explain a move that Samus gets for the first time in this game and also appears in almost every single 2D Metroid game, and it's the Shinespark, or Speed Booster if you don't like cool names. This is a power-up that allows Samus to run super fast after running in a straight line for a little while. This ability decimates enemies that block your path and destroys specific blocks. The amazing thing is that you can store the energy of the Shinespark by crouching and then launch yourself into another direction. Even though it's a little hard to master, it is one of those mechanics that becomes really satisfying once you get the hang of it. To be honest, there are certain things that I would change about Super Metroid, but keep in mind that these are so minuscule that they don't really hamper the whole experience. They come down as personal preference. But I'm just gonna say that I'm really glad how they changed how you select missiles and bombs in Zero Mission and Fusion compared to Super Metroid. Even though rapid fire missiles is kinda cool, the modularity of toggling between whether you want to use your missiles or not on the fly is a little better. But even though the gameplay in Super Metroid is pretty straightforward, there is something that I really dislike about it, and is the wall jumping mechanic. Remember when I said that the boss fight against Mother Brain in the original Metroid was like getting choked by a controller? Because of the wall jumping in this game, I felt exactly that. I even thought my controller was broken. Legit, I spent an ungodly amount of time in this wall jumping tutorial. I felt like that one guy that reviewed Cuphead on YouTube that couldn't get past the tutorial. It felt like I never held a controller before in my life. Hell, I even googled to see if I was the only one having trouble in this, and nope. Apparently, it's a really unforgiving mechanic in Super Metroid. And you've been watching me struggle through this all this time. But there are people that have mastered this technique to the point that they can perpetually wall jump just using one wall. And to be honest, this mechanic is only needed for a couple of power-ups. So even though it almost made me pop a blood vessel screaming at my screaming anger, it's not something that I had to deal with constantly. But aside from rage-inducing finicky mechanics, the game hasn't aged at all when it comes to its exploration. Games nowadays narrow themselves down so anyone can jump right in and have fun, usually locking certain power-ups or items through progression. Super Metroid thinks that if you have the skills necessary to get an item earlier, you should be able to get it, whether if it's perpetually moving up by using bombs or a well-executed Shinespark. The game allows you to get stuff early. In my last video, I got a comment from someone that thinks Super Metroid is the best way to start with a franchise, and even though he posed some valid reasons as to why you should start with this game, I disagree. Super Metroid is an amazing game, but compared to other games in the franchise, it can be a really intimidating title. The map feature is the bare minimum, which is expected to a game from the early 90s. The floating controls and the odd choices of controller scheme can definitely alienate players that want to start with a franchise. It's a good game, but not for beginners. In the vein of talking about traveling between zones, Super Metroid has multiple exits for every zone, and each one is interconnected via tunnels. Backtracking is not a problem at all, and it was a bliss to go back and get some missing power-ups. As revisiting these games, I came to the conclusion that Metroid never actually needed a teleporting or a fast travel function, because the earlier games were able to interconnect themselves, so it never felt so as a chore to go back to a specific zone to get a power-up. The same is going to apply to Fusion, and Samus Returns went all the way and flat out added teleporting stations. I'm saying that it's cool to see how a game so big didn't need fast travel at that time, and I can understand why Nintendo never added them for Fusion or Zero Mission. But Zero Mission is still a very bad game when it comes to its backtracking. Finally, after talking about the gameplay, let's go with the lore. The story of Super Metroid is actually the easiest one to tell. The story takes place shortly after Samus leaves SR388 with the last surviving Metroid. She decides to head to a space station owned by the Federation, hoping that maybe they could find a way to have non-hostile Metroids and use their powers for the greater good of the universe. Once the baby is in good hands, Samus leaves the station, when suddenly she gets a distress signal from the station that she just left, which gives the same energy of you leaving your child at the daycare, and on the way out you see a fire truck heading towards there. So Samus, on apparently rush, goes back to the station to find the personnel dead, and upon heading to the back room, she finds the baby alone in a box. Samus approaches it, but Ridley appears from the background and engages Samus. They fight, but Ridley decides to leave with the baby and sets off the self-destruct sequence of the ship. Samus leaves and gives chase to Ridley, who has returned to planet Sebes. Samus lands on top of Tourian and starts her journey to find Ridley and the baby. Plunging into the depths of Sebes, you find out that the space pirates are planning a comeback, and with new enemies as their captains. She fights a revived Kraid, Phantoon, a snake, and Crocomire while revisiting many zones of Sebes, gathering power-ups, and even finding some animals that teach Samus some new moves. Once she gets to Ridley and destroys him, she finds out that the baby is nowhere to be seen. The deaths of their commanders has broken a mysterious statue that was placed on Tourian, which upon investigation opens up to a new path to the depths of the planet. Samus gets there to find that there are still hostile Metroids in there, and upon entering to a new room that feels like a giant desert, a giant Metroid larvae attacks Samus, draining her health almost completely. But just before it deals the finishing blow, the larvae stops. It's the baby, and it just realized what it has done. It attacked its mother. Feeling ashamed, it leaves with Samus left hurt and confused, determined to find what's happening in Tourian, why there are new Metroids, and then she enters to a familiar room and encounters a revived Mother Brain. You defeat her in the same vein as in the first game, but later she comes back with a new organic body to fight Samus once again. They took it out, but just before Samus is able to destroy it, she unleashes the Hyper Beam, depleting Samus's energy almost completely. Just before she can do the coup de grace, the baby Metroid appears and starts draining the health out of Mother Brain. It goes then to Samus to heal its real mother, but once Mother Brain regains consciousness, she starts attacking the baby while she's still healing Samus. It is able to withstand the damage, but once it tries to go for the kill, Mother Brain destroys the last surviving Metroid. Samus looks in horror as the last thing it did before disappearing forever was to give Samus access to the Hyper Beam, which she uses to destroy Mother Brain once and for all. In a last-ditch effort to take down Samus, Mother Brain engages a self-destruct sequence of the entire planet. Samus rushes towards the surface of the planet, but also does a small detour to save the animals that taught her new moves. Samus leaves Sebes one last time, saying goodbye to the baby Metroid and the dreadful memory of this place. Super Metroid has a more light story compared to other games in the franchise. It's a little funny that Super Metroid feels more like a soft reset of the original story, hence coming back to Sebes. It feels as if the developers wanted to release the original game, but as a sequel. It's really funny. Super Metroid can become a very lore-heavy game if you decide to answer some questions, like who is Phantoon, to whom belonged the abandoned ship, are the Chozo statues alive, that sort of stuff that my friend Albert on the Orpheon has been covering for years. The Orpheon is a channel mostly dedicated to Metroid lore and character profiles. He's a very cool dude and even watched my video on Samus Returns. You have no idea how much it means to a small channel like mine to have their content watched by a bigger channel, especially considering that most of the things that I know about Metroid are all thanks to Albert. So please look him up. To conclude, Super Metroid is an amazing game, and it's no wonder why it was always able to hold a legacy so massive, via speedrunning or just people talking about the game, which is only compared to very few Nintendo franchises. Would I recommend Super Metroid for you to start with the series? Not at all. I still hold up that Fusion and Zero Mission are more welcoming games for beginners. It's still great, but a little intimidating. But that's going to be all from me for today. Thank you all you guys for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more of my content, consider subscribing. And I will see you next time with Metroid Fuel. Oh no. I thought I was going to be able to get away from it. I thought I was going to be able to just cover the 4 2D Metroid games and not have to mention this game. But the story calls for it. It's going to be something that is going to be mentioned in the future. It's going to be part of Metroid Dread for that matter. So yeah. Even though I dread going into that game, next time we are going to postpone Metroid Fusion, and we're going to cover Metroid Other Realm. See you guys then.